started here. Let me get this rolling. We are very happy to bring together this luncheon, named after Charles B. Rangel, who has been absolutely in our corner from day one. We actually created a series when we started our meetups called Tech Talks with Congressman Rangel. And he would bring some of the top minds from the private sector and the public sector to sit down and talk right here in Harlem. So we owe him a lot of gratitude for all the support, cleared a lot of ways for us. And I'm glad that he is able to sort of attend with us today. So before we have him say a few words, we're going to have another one of our great supporters and a Harlemite, grew up in Harlem. And he just sat down, but I'm going to bring him up right away, which is the great Rodney Capel from Spectrum.
Thank you. Thank you, Clayton. Good afternoon. How's it going? Pleasure to be here with you all today. My name is Rodney Capel. I'm Vice President for Government Affairs for Spectrum. You've heard about us, I think, recently. First, let me thank Silicon Harlem for the recognition, allowing us to come and join you here at the Charlie Rangel lunch. Man who I have known all my life and has been an inspiration and real impactful person in my career. You talk about having someone who is guiding and investing in young people. He's done that all my career, so I want to thank him for all he's done for me. As the leading TV, internet, and phone provider for New York City, we are committed to hiring a diverse workforce that is reflective of the customer and the communities that we serve. So it's great to be able to work with a group like Silicon Harlem, who is dedicated to making sure that we get the digital divide, as we know, eradicated from our communities. We at Spectrum are dedicated to that same focus, working with communities. We are establishing learning labs across the city. We opened a couple in the upper Manhattan area just this year, and we're going to continue to sort of work with the communities across the city to make certain that access to broadband and other sort of important services are provided. And that's one of the things that it's our mission to do. We also have opened a number of stores and put a real investment here in New York City. We will be opening a store right here on 125th Street, which we're very proud of, and we're going to have a nice little opening, I think, next week, a soft opening, and then have the general public definitely by the holidays. So it's a pleasure to be a partner here as a resident and native Harlemite. I'm glad to work for a company that recognizes the importance of our community and also the growth and potential that can be provided with the issues that face us in the tech world. So that's all I had. I want to thank you for having us. I don't know where. Did he sneak off? Thank you so much.
Give him a hand, everyone. It's a real commitment.
Rodney, give me a call.
And Congressman said, Rodney, give me a call. I need some money. That's what we need, Capel. We need some money. But it's a great pleasure to introduce the legend in Harlem, the man who set more policy than probably any other politician in New York City for this district. And I just want to thank him once again for his support. But let him say a few words as we continue to eat and do everything. But please try to listen into some of these very wise words that the Congressman has to bring to you. Congressman Rangel, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Since I left the Congress, there are very few things have excited me as much as seeing Harlem Silicon. The seeds that we planted years ago are beginning to bear fruit, and this has to be just the beginning. I worked pro bono as the statesman in residence at City College, and when people ask just exactly what do you do, I can only answer any damn thing I want to do because I raise money for City College, and now that Spectrum is making this on-site dedication to support their efforts nationally, when I get back this afternoon to City College, I would like to see a partnership with Spectrum and City College so that we continue to grow with the concept of this being the salvation not only of people in our community, but certainly our nation. I'll be brief because this is a campaign period in my life and in this country, and I'm going around the country trying to make certain that the midterm elections actually be a turn in the direction that our great country has to go in order to maintain its domestic and international survival. Unfortunately, at times, even with the excitement of winning back the House, there are so many people of color that are so disappointed with the presidency and the administration that I have to start from the beginning to remind people that this is a baby republic. If you compare the birth of nations, we're a few hundred years old. This is a nation that at one point the majority of us were slaves. This is a nation that never intended to include us with the equality of humanity. And so we cannot allow a sick incompetent that sweep through to the presidency ever to think that we're giving up or we're giving out or we're giving in. I'm not very spiritual, but after the election of President Obama, there were some people, white and black, who thought, what a tremendous breakthrough. And at long last, our country was going to be as great as she could be. But as it turned out, his presidency allowed all the vile, evil people that was hiding under the rugs and the rocks to come out. That's a blessing. It's a blessing that we at least know what we're up against, that we cannot go to sleep and believe that we have attained a goal that we can attain. And we have to remember why this afternoon is so important. That one of the first things they did when they took the Africans from the continent to the so-called New World is to make certain that they were not educated, to take away their name, their background, their culture, their education, their self-esteem, and to build that into a nationalism that unfortunately still exists today, where people believe just because of their color, they're entitled. But you can't stop technology. It has no color. It doesn't know who the hell is communicating to whom. This is one thing that is a door opening. It's the Emancipation Proclamation in modern times. And Clayton and Lincoln have walked into the darkness of ignorance and brought into our community a key that our society has yet to pick up and unlock that door of prejudice and bigotry to allow them to participate, to make this nation all that she can be. You don't have to be a patriot or historian to recognize that the only reason that we don't have a decent and civil immigration policy is because of the color of the immigrants. And history will tell you it's not just Africans, and it's not just a plea for Norwegians, but the Italians caught hell, some of the Irish caught hell, and even the president can't find someone in this country to marry unless we didn't do this to him. I mean, this is a fact. And so when your policy of immigration is based on the lack of color or the color of your skin, even though the needs are there, we are in needs of technician, the math and sciences. We are in need of construction workers. And that's what built America. And that's why I'm working at City College to make certain that we find some way to make it a national mission. This isn't a race thing. This is a national security thing, so that when we move forward, that we move forward as patriots and lover of this great republic. And the reason that we have a Larry Irving is not because he's bright. It's not because he's good looking. It's not because he's married a wife that got more degrees than a thermometer. It's not because we raised him in the Congressional Black Caucus with Mickey Leland. It's not because of Vice President Gore and Clinton. It's not because of all of those things. And it's not because he's from Brooklyn that cares enough to understand that we don't have to talk about what we have to overcome. But the reason for his greatness is to show the world, and especially this country and this administration, that given the opportunity, there isn't a damn thing that we can't accomplish. So Larry is not a credit to his people. Larry is a credit to humanity that can, once you plant the seed as to what we can do in technology, he knows how to exploit it, to explore, and to make certain that he can inspire people like you who sit in the audience that do recognize, under the leadership of Lincoln and Clayton, that this is the beginning of a new world. And at 88 years old, I'm a little offended that already you're calling it the next generation. Because damn it to hell, this old generation wants to be able to be a part of the hard work that each one of you have done. But more importantly, you took time out on this wonderful day to come to this conference, not just to learn more yourselves, but to be those pioneers to express how important this is to our great country. So Larry, I can't thank you enough for never, never forgetting where you came from and where our great country can go. Thank you so much for being here.
Congressman, stay up here with me. So as we said, this is a historic day, a day of surprises, and what we'd like to announce now, prior to Larry coming up and giving us his set of remarks and presentation, is on behalf of Silicon Harlem and Charles B. Rangel, we'd like to provide to and confer upon Larry Irving the Charles B. Rangel Innovation Person Award, the IP Award. Larry, come on up and get this, my brother.
This is beautiful.
That's beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations,
Thank you, sir.
Larry.
Thank you very
Proud.
So, Clayton, Bruce were shocked a little bit before and speechless. People who know me know I'm never speechless. I talk in my sleep, which is my wife's regret after 43 years. But this is an honor, and it's a particular honor to have an award named after Congressman Rangel. He'll always be a chairman, and Chairman Rangel to me, and I think I have some slides somewhere now. I want to explain to you a little bit about my background. I have to thank Silicon Harlem, I have to thank Bruce, I have to thank Clayton, I have to thank Eric, and all of you who are here. I'm a boy from Brooklyn, but when I was in college and law school, we were constituents of Congressman Rangel, and I've gotten 2 awards in my life now that I'm really proud of. One is the Mickey Leland Award from NAMIC, and now from Silicon Harlem, the Charlie Rangel Award. You can't get better awards than that if you're a black man from New York. You just cannot. So I'm supposed to be doing slides. I'm not sure if we have them. If we have them, I'm going to try to talk off the slides a little bit and give you a little bit of background about where we are. So we're here in Harlem, Silicon Harlem, and I want to talk about the fact that the genesis of everything you think about internet policy was born here in Harlem. And let me explain to you how that happened, why it's important, what we're doing today carry forward. I see some young people over here, some young people over there, some of us in the middle, a little older, but y'all have the opportunity. Whatever I've done in life, if I've seen a little further, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. I stand on the shoulders of men like Mickey Leland and Charlie Rangel. You stand on the shoulders of the men and women in this room, and you need to avail yourselves of the wisdom that you're going to learn, you're going to partake of today. So I started out in 1995. There's this thing called the Information Superhighway. And in 1993, a young Korean-American artist created this beautiful piece of art that's in the Smithsonian American Art Museum. And I always start my speeches out with that because in 1993, there were 14 million people on the internet. China was ascendant, Japan was ascendant, European Union was created, the United States was a little bit on its heels, and 2 young, bright men were elected to be president and vice president of the United States, and they had a vision. They were going to build a bridge to the 21st century, and the information superhighway, the internet word. Now, I got, very few people in their life have a chance to work with people like Wendy Later, one of my colleagues who's here, and the wonderful people I worked with. But I got to work for the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States. I'm born in the projects in Brooklyn. My dad had an 8th grade education. My mom had an associate's degree from Brooklyn College. We moved to Queens when they got civil service jobs. And at 36 years old, 37 years old, I'm working with the President of the United States. That doesn't happen because of me. It happens with a lot of other people. It's not about applause for me. It's because of this man, Mickey Leland, that I got that first shot. I get out of college, I got a job at a big law firm. I hate being at a big law firm. I meet this brother, and Mickey says, yo, come work with me. We're going to change the world. First man I ever heard to say I'm a citizen of the world was Mickey Leland, and he truly was. He died in Africa trying to feed the hungry, but his vision was so big, and he understood that telecommunication technology was going to be what changed the world. Through Mickey, I got to know other members of the caucus. And these three men have always been essential, but particularly the 2 on the right and to the right. Percy Sutton from Inner City Broadcasting, former borough president of this great borough. I grew up with his nieces and nephews out in St. Albans. And Mr. Sutton understood technology more than anything else. And Charlie Rangel. When I became Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Rangel said, you need to come up here. We're doing enterprise zones. You need to come and talk to people about what this internet thing means for black people, for brown people, people who don't speak English, for immigrants. We need to understand it. And I came up to Harlem because the Congressman asked me. But Mr. Sutton had something else. He had a radio station. And he had one of the first black talk radio stations. And whenever he asked me to, I'd come up here and say, there's this thing called the internet. Remember, 15 million people. Nobody knew what it existed. When I'm telling people at the internet, they're like, well, what is this thing? Like, well, it's like a television, but it's not, it's a computer. Most people had never seen it, and he wanted me to come and explain it. Ron Brown was my boss. And the reason I got that job with Al Gore and Bill Clinton was because of Ron Brown, Charlie Rangel, and Percy Sutton. Man who grew up in the Hotel Cerise in Harlem, not too far from here, and who understood what it meant to be black, what it meant to be committed, and what this next revolution could mean for everything. He was put in charge. There would have been no President Clinton and Vice President Gore but for Ron Brown. Let's get that straight. He was the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. So when you meet Michael Blake here early this morning as a vice chair, we need to encourage him to become the chair one day so we will have another Bill Clinton, Barack Obama. These young men make a difference. A young Ron Brown helped get Bill Clinton elected. And Ron Brown said, I want you to come work with me, Larry, and I'll tell you a true story. My family had a little place in Florida. We go down for Christmas. And it's Christmas 1992. Bill Clinton had been elected. I'd been to Economic Summit. Ron Brown called. Now, Ron's a rock star to black people, particularly black people my parents' age. He calls. My mom makes a phone. She goes, Larry, it's Ron Brown. I'm like, yes, it's Ron Brown. Okay. So I go pick up the phone. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Secretary. Yes, sir. Mother says, so why is Ron Brown calling you? And I said, well, he's calling because he wants me to consider being an assistant secretary when he's confirmed as Secretary of Commerce. Mother goes, assistant secretary? What's an assistant secretary? I said, well, I'll have this portfolio of issues and I'll run a federal agency of 300 people. And there's like this minute-long silence. My mother says, you're gonna run a federal agency? Boy, the only thing you've ever run is your mouth. And everybody in the world needs a mama like that to keep you straight. So Ron understood that this thing had to be about more than just a lot of folks making a lot of money. And the very first policy document that was ever created anywhere on the planet about the internet and information society was this document right here. Ron Brown was the author of this. I was a sub-author of this. We were talking about what technology could mean. It was Ron's vision that it'd be inclusive. And the White House sent us over a committee of 25 people we're going to call the NIAC, the National Information Infrastructure Advisory Committee. There were 25 names in that committee. 22 were white men. Ron said, not on my watch, brother. I'm not chairing a committee of 22 white men and 3 other people. Sent it back. When we got the next iteration, it was 25 people, but 12 of them were people of color or women. That's the power of being Ron Brown about inclusion. Now, I can't pull it up right now. But I want to read something to you that we wrote in 1993, and I think you'll find it's instructive. Written in 1993. Imagine you had a device that combined a telephone, a TV, a camcorder, and a personal computer. No matter where you went or what time, a child could see and talk to you. You could watch a replay of your team's last game. You could browse the latest additions to the library. You could find the best prices in town on groceries, furniture, clothes, whatever you wanted. 1993. The iPhone was invented in 2007. The iPad came out in 2010. We wrote this in 1993 under the leadership of Ron Brown. Imagine further that the best schools, teachers, and courses are available to all students without regard to geography, distance, or resources. The vast resources of art, literature, and science were available everywhere, not just in large institutions or big city libraries. Services that improve America's healthcare systems and respond to other important social medias were available online when and where you needed them. That was our vision, what we wanted to create, what we thought the internet could be in 1993. But what we also knew is we needed some policy principles to undergird that vision. When you talk about open internet, when you talk about open data, when you talk about universal service, when you talk about the digital divide, it all comes from really smart people that Ron Brown brought together in 1993. The 25th anniversary of that document was September 25th of this year. All of the things we're talking about today, we presaged in these documents, and we're still talking about, we got a lot right. We have gone from 15 million people to 4 billion people because we took these principles around the world. When you see a school, you see a hospital, you see a library connected, it's because Bill Clinton, Al Gore, Ron Brown said, we are going to do this. We're going to create these anchor institutions that will be part of what we're going to do. We're going to bring people to these community technology centers to get to learn about the internet. We did it in Harlem, we did it in Brooklyn, we did it in Sacramento, we did it in Boonesboro, Kentucky. I've been to Pikesville, Kentucky, I've been to Alaska, I've been to Siberia, I've been to Africa talking about the internet because that was our vision. You may have heard the term digital divide, and I'm going to briefly talk about that. Ron and I went up to San Francisco in 1994. Wendy, I don't think was quite with me yet, but Wendy wrote a lot of papers on digital divide. We went in 1994. Went down to Cupertino, California, where Apple's headquartered. We saw these beautiful kids, just gorgeous little kids, and they're sitting around a desk like this, 8 to a desk, and they're checking out the internet, and they're checking out computers. We drove not an hour to Thurgood Marshall High School at Hunters Point in San Francisco. Mostly black, mostly brown, most of those, 80% of the kids were on school lunch programs. Those kids never knew a computer existed. They had no idea a thing called the internet could ever happen for their lives. And we decided at that point we needed to articulate a vision, and that's where the term digital divide comes from. That one day with Ron, seeing kids who had everything and kids who didn't even know there was something they needed to have. This is a map of the digital divide today, and I'm going to have to keep, because I can't see the screen, I'm going to have to keep looking to make sure I'm at the right place, but this screen looks at the digital divide today in terms of where access is. It doesn't tell, I mean, it doesn't tell you about adoption. It just tells you who has access. But there's one thing, I was in Australia and I gave a speech one day on the digital divide, and I gave another speech the next day to some friends in Australia about America and our electoral politics. If you look at the blue spots on the left, which are areas where there's very fast internet speed, and you look at where Mrs. Clinton won, which is the blue on here, they sync up 1-to-1. One of the reasons so many people in this country don't feel like they belong is they don't have access to the things that we have here. There are two economies in this country. If you're a farmer, if you're rural, you don't see this country as really belonging to you. If you're in New York City, if you're in San Francisco, if you're in Washington, D.C., you're in Boston, hell, there's all kinds of opportunities if you're smart enough, entrepreneurial enough, and if people have put those technology in school and you've learned about it. But there's a real divide. But 11% of our country, our fellow brothers and sisters, and 50% of Harlem and 30% of Bed-Stuy aren't online right now. That's 27 million American adults who don't use the internet, 87 million Americans who don't have home broadband, 50 million who use a smartphone only. And I love my smartphone. I got 3 of them here with me, all right? I use smartphones for everything, but it's not the same as having broadband internet at home if you want it. When you think about our children, Commissioner Jessica Rosenworcel at the FCC talks constantly about the homework gap. 70% of our nation's teachers have their kids take homework home that needs the internet. 5 million low-income kids, disproportionately black, brown, Latino, Spanish-speaking, foreign language-speaking children don't have internet at home. If you're a single parent who's born in another country, your kid almost certainly doesn't have broadband internet at home in a country as rich as this. How does that happen? The homework gap disproportionately affects the people who need it the most. This is what happens in an internet minute. In an internet minute, you've got 1 million snaps. You've got 1.1 million people swiping left to right on Tinder. You've got 187 million emails. Yesterday, Michael Jordan put, I think, $10–15 million in esports. There will be billions of dollars built from esports, and a lot of these things we didn't know existed just a few years ago, and now these technologies are ubiquitous, and people are using them, except for some of the people who want to use them. The internet's going to continue to change. We're talking about energy, agriculture, manufacturing, vehicles. You've heard some of the conversation. I'll go through this quickly, but the internet's going to change more rapidly than any of us can possibly conceive. And these new applications are going to need more broadband. I listen to Anna talk. I listen to other T-Mobile talk, and absolutely they're right. We need more capacious. Maria and I have been friends for years. Marie couldn't be more right about the need for more capacious networks, and Anna couldn't be more right about in construction. But Joel can't be more right about this. Has to be a private-public partnership. We have to have both sides talking to each other. Everything we did in the 90s was private and public. It wasn't just about us and the government. It was, what's the private sector doing and how do we do this together? How do we create a win-win? Make a lot of money, but make a difference for people who need that difference made. 5G is coming. It's going to be smaller. It's going to be faster. There's less latency. We're going to go from 4 billion people today to trillions of things that are connected. And I'm going to talk about a little bit more about that in a second. That's real. But when we go back, let me go back to 5G, because there's something Joel and I were talking about, Joel Breitbart and I were talking about just before this panel. The FCC's made a decision. They've made a decision that 5G deployment in a city like New York or Baltimore or Washington, where I live, is going to be determined by the federal government. They're going to say how much a city can charge. Now, a couple of months ago, LA decided they were going to go 5G. And LA said, you can go 5G and you can use public resources, but we want you to do some things in our schools, and we want to make sure you don't redline communities. And we want. Now, I grew up in the cable era. I was on the board of COVAD, a DSL provider. I've been a consultant for AT&T, Verizon, CTI, a whole bunch of companies. And I will tell you that fight against redlining is a constant fight for us. And when you take away the ability of cities to regulate what happens with providers, you take away the ability to make sure they don't redline. I've been black 63 years of my life, and I'm going to tell you, all 63 years of my life, black folks had to fight to avoid being redlined. And we're not going to, and those of you who get to be my age, 63, you'll still be fighting about redlining, because poor people and people without political power always have that kind of a struggle. So when you hear the 5G fight, it's not just about 5G, it's about 5G and who gets it first, when do they get it, how do they get it, and what pricing they get it, and whether or not we can also build up the social infrastructure from funding from the people who are building this 5G in our communities. So don't sleep this 5G fight, because it matters. The Internet of Things has so many incredible applications, and I'm excited about them, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about some of the problems with what might go on. Now, smart cities. This is a commercial entity's depiction of a smart city. It's got all kinds of commercial operations that are connected. But what's not connected? Universities. Shouldn't CCNY or UDC in DC or Baltimore City College be connected? What about schools? What about libraries? What about hospitals? What about Civic Hall? So if we're going to talk about smart cities, let's make sure that they're smart and inclusively smart cities, because if we don't do that, if we fail that at the beginning, we're going to fail a lot of millions of people across this country. I'm excited about the opportunity to do autonomous vehicles, and what we're seeing now is really, really cool. We're seeing autonomous vehicles becoming more and more of a catchphrase, and we're seeing it happening everywhere. Billions of dollars being invested, lots of competition. But we talk about the gig economy and loss of jobs. My daddy worked at Con Edison. He also drove, every Christmas, he drove a cab. I've got another uncle who was a bus driver. I have friends who are truck drivers. We're talking tens of millions of jobs in this country, particularly for working class people, particularly people who are black and brown, that depend on people driving. What happens when those jobs go away? Who's thinking about that? And what are they going to be upskilled to? And who's thinking about that? And if our civic institutions, if we don't build a social infrastructure, how do we get the folks who are displaced from those jobs into jobs that are working class, middle class jobs that can sustain a family? Parking is something I had never thought about, but when we go to autonomous cars, most of us who have a car, I have a car, I live in DC, my wife has a car, that car's parked 96% of the time. When we go to autonomous vehicles, we may free up parking that will approximate land area the size of the state of Connecticut. Think about that, because those cars will be in motion all the time. They won't be sitting in a garage. Instead of 96% use, it'd be 100% or 80% or whatever it is. Think about the pollution when people aren't riding around looking for parking. Lots of good things are going to happen for it. But as we repurpose parking lots in city after city after city, what's societal use? Who's engineering now? Who's thinking about those on-ramps? We were talking about a little earlier today. We put the on-ramp in. Well, what are the on-ramps going to look like when we change out the parking dynamic in this country? And who's giving those thoughts? Because that's what those things are going to need. I love virtual reality. I'm a Northwestern grad, I'm a Stanford grad. There's a young guy at Stanford, his name is Derek Belch, created a company called Striver. You've never heard of Striver, but you've seen Striver. If you ever watched Clemson, if you watched the Washington Capitals win the national championship last year, you've heard of Striver. Striver is a VR where an athlete puts this goggle on, and he or she can then see the game and get mental memory from watching how to stop a goal. If you're a quarterback, your coach can say over you, make sure you're doing your checkdowns right. Are you going over, you're doing the right procedure, and whatever. The Washington Capitals, for their goalies and all their players. We're now seeing Striver take it to Walmart. They're taking it to Fidelity. People are being trained. So if you're a new person at Walmart, they put the goggles on you, you have a great opportunity. We're seeing VR be used for medical devices. For those of you who've been pregnant, when the person would do the ultrasound, the doctor or the technician do the ultrasound, they look this way to look at the monitor, and ultrasound you this way. Well, now with VR, they can look directly at you. There's more interpersonal experience. We're seeing wonderful things happen with VR. One of my favorite applications is police. And I apologize for that text. We forgot to get that out. I'm a black man in America. I've had guns put to my head. I've been spread eagled across the street. I've had all of the experience that every black man in America has had with police officers. James Mattis says that he wants every combatant in the armed forces to have 25 bloodless battles before they have one real battle. What if you put every police officer in a virtual reality context? Use biometric devices so we can figure out their galvanic skin temperature, figure out their pulse, figure out where they're going, and see if that police officer is got an issue with black folks, got an issue with women, got an issue with people who speak Spanish. What's that officer's predilection when he sees somebody who looks like me as opposed to somebody who doesn't look like me? We can do that right now. It is happening in places. We just need the wisdom to use VR for all kinds of things. The first time I saw VR, I was taken by virtual reality to a refugee camp in Syria. I thought I knew what a refugee camp was, and then I put that VR on, and I'm seeing a mother with her child, and it's so close I can almost touch. I can hear the voices and the crying. I can hear the latrines behind me. These are life-changing types of technologies. We put them to the right uses. How many people in this room have an Alexa or Google or Siri or one of those kinds of things, some kind of a home device? Anybody out there have one of those things? Your life's about to change. So my mama, I got her an Alexa a couple of Christmases ago, and I said, you need an Alexa. My mom's 88 years old. I love 88-year-olds. My mother's 88 years old too, and I bought her an Alexa and said, whenever you need to order, when you need something new, you need Tide, you need whisk, you need whatever, just say, Alexa, I need this, it'll go in your shopping cart. And then I would get her phone, and my nephew who's 25, he'll say, why are you doing it? Just have Amazon come deliver it. So now Amazon delivers it. They have all kinds of information about my mother, but her life's a lot easier. Imagine when you take Alexa to the workplace. Imagine you want to set up a conference room. Imagine you want to change a meeting. Instead of your assistant that you have now, you're using Alexa. Imagine you wake up in the morning and you have a meeting on 48th Lexington Hotel, right? And Alexa says, Larry, you have a meeting with Congressman Rangel. You're meeting with 48 Lex. You don't want to take 2nd Avenue. You want to take F.D.R. Drive because there's construction on 40th Avenue. And by the way, Mr. Rangel's wife just had her anniversary, and you met him 2 years ago at such and such a conference. That virtual assistant's going to be more intuitive about everything you do and have better sense of what's happening right now. And by the way, take your umbrella, Larry, because it's going to rain. If you don't have your umbrella, you can get rain, you get back. That's what's going to be happening in 5 to 7 years. John Donovan of AT&T said this is happening, but how many jobs are assistant jobs? How many other people who have jobs right now? These are the kinds of things. Remind me to print in the sales report. What's on my calendar? Cancel my 2 p.m. meeting. It's all you have to do. That Alexa will never come in with a headache. She'll never have had a fight with her boyfriend or girlfriend. She won't take days off. She won't be distracted because he's got to do his Christmas shopping and he forgot to get something for his mom. None of those things are going to happen with Alexa. She's going to be focused 100% of the time on you and your needs and get smarter about you every day. Bill Gates said decades ago that we want to put a computer on every desk, and now there are companies that say they want to put a robot on every desk, and it's going to happen. And here's the reason why. Because these are the kinds of things you can do. Think of the thing you hate most to do, and imagine that the robot at your desk can do it for you. It doesn't have to be a robot like Robbie the robot. It can be a software robot that takes all the tasks that you hate and do it for you. Timesheets, accounting, anything that's repetitive and ugly, it's going to be free for you to do. If you have to convert data and make a graph, if you have to do data analysis, if you have to do mass mail, if you have to do file storage, that's what's going to be happening for you. Facial recognition, we pick up our iPhones, we pick up our iPads, and it recognizes our face, and it's a beautiful thing, we think. But facial recognition is being driven all over this planet, and not necessarily in good ways. ACLU did a survey earlier this year. You know, when you do facial recognition, it doesn't necessarily work for people of color. They did 40 members of Congress. What they found is that 1 out of every 5 black members of Congress were misidentified and were seen as somebody who was in a mugshot. This is not, you know, a lot of you remember the instance where Google did some facial recognition and they called the black people as gorillas. I mean, these are problems because a large part of the problem is who's doing the data input. We need to be careful about facial recognition, but we need to be careful for another reason. Somebody earlier today mentioned Black Mirror. And some of you may have seen a show about social credits, where what you did online gave you credits so you could go up and down. It's not science fiction, folks. It's happening in China right now. China has a social credit system for 1.4 billion people. And if you use the internet the way they like you to use the internet, you buy the right things, you say the right things, you have the right friends, you get plus social credits. But if you do the wrong things, you get negative social credits. If you jaywalk because of facial recognition, you get negative credits. If you drop litter, you get negative social credits. If you chew gum in certain places, you get negative social credits. If you see a Muslim on the street and say, hey, bro, you get negative social credits. These are all things that are happening, not in the science fiction, happening today. In China, they're starting in some areas and go to 1.4 billion. And it's not just who you are. Say you have a friend that you're on Facebook or social media or WeChat that's your buddy, and they're doing these things. You can be dinged in your social credit rating because of that. And here are the kind of, if you adulterate a product and market it, you lose. Drunk driving, you lose. Out of illegal religion, you lose. But if you get a public commendation or if you help somebody cross the street, you get more points. This isn't like I'm making this up. This is happening today. And here's what happens if you're good. If you have a high social rating, you get better loans, you get better jobs, you get into better schools. These are things that you get for being a good social citizen. Now, as I said, we laid a groundwork 25 years ago what the internet was going to look like and how we were going to use this technology. China's laying a groundwork right now. There's an interesting article in this month's Wired. It's just coming out on artificial intelligence. I don't usually pimp for other periodicals. Read about artificial intelligence. Check out what's happening. You need to know. And we need to be forearmed. And I actually believe there's an opportunity for the United States to show that technology can be used for good or for bad, and we intend to use it for good, but we have to have the debate, we have to have the understanding, we have to have this discussion. For 25 years, I've loved seeing this internet thing. I've loved being at the forefront of what I think was the most spectacular revolution of my lifetime. The next 5 to 10 years will be even more important. And I can see my personal XP data on my personal milk carton getting louder and getting clearer and clearer. So it's on y'all, the folks in this room and in rooms like this, to carry the ball forward in terms of what this internet thing is, what IT revolution is going to be all about. I'm not quite sure where we go from here, but I do know we need to rethink. We need an internet. In 1993, we were thinking about an network for consumers that was going to be competitive, that was going to make better lives for workers in America. If we start from those kind of precepts, just say those are the things we want, we can do some good things over the next 5, 6 years. There have been a lot of politicians and people who have access to politicians in this room, and that's right, because they're the ones who create the policies we're going to live by. We need a social infrastructure that works. We need civic halls. It wasn't an accident we did libraries and community technology centers. I knew that in Southeast Queens or in Harlem or in Bed-Stuy, brothers and sisters weren't going to have this technology in their homes fast, but I knew that they could go to a public library or go to their schools. The people who got internet access at home first in the 90s were two types of people. People had access to it at work, and people had access to it in schools, and they realized they needed it at home. That's what drove it. We need to do the same thing with these next set of technologies, particularly people who don't have it at home and don't have the resources to have it. You often hear about light touch regulation. I'm one of the authors of the concept of light touch regulation. There's this cute little cuddly animal called the internet, and we had sock puppets, and all kinds of beautiful things happening on the internet. And we didn't want to strangle that. We wanted that to thrive, and we wanted it to become vibrant. We wanted it to benefit all of us. We wanted it to grow up to be strong and prosperous and work well. And that's what we got today. I ain't got nothing against Google or Microsoft or Netflix or Facebook. They do some powerful things, but they're huge companies. We have $2 trillion companies, and you don't regulate a $1 trillion company like you regulate a bear cub. So when I have people come and say, well, Larry, you came with light touch regulation. That was 25 years ago, and you were this big, dude. Like, look at you now. You're bigger than Shaquille O'Neal, and you want to be treated as if you're, Daffy Duck. It doesn't work that way. We've got to rethink a lot of, what does competition policy mean in an era of $1 trillion companies that know everything about you, and not for societal gain, for their personal gain. When you go on Facebook, not only do they know everything you do on Facebook, but because of cookies, they know everything you do off of Facebook. And you give this away for free. And people who know me know I use Facebook all the time, but good God, there's got to be limits on what we do, and think about their impact on our elections over the next few weeks. The Facebook may have more impact than anything that the president does, anything the Democratic National Committee does, and that should scare all of us. The oldest, youngest, sickest, poorest, hungriest, most recent immigrants, most geographically distant, most vulnerable among us are the most likely to be the people not connected to the internet. They're almost always precisely the people who most need the benefits the internet can provide. If you take nothing else from what I'm saying away today, think about the 50% of people who are your neighbors here in Harlem who don't have access yet. And think about what 5G not being connected will mean for them. Are we making things worse for them? I'm going to close with two thoughts. 70 years ago, there was a great day in Harlem. It wasn't the only great day in Harlem, because Harlem gave us Zora Neale Hurston, and it gave County Cullen, and it gave us Adam Clayton Powell, and it gave us Richard Wright, and it gave us Malcolm X, and it gave us Marcus Garvey. Harlem's always had great days. But in this day, 70 years ago, 60 years ago? I'm sorry, my math is off. 60 years ago, some of the smartest people, some of the greatest people, artists on the planet, congregated on a stoop stop on 126th Street, and he took a picture. Dizzy Gillespie, Count Basie, Milton Hinton, Sonny Rollins, people who created jazz as we know it. And it's been an iconic picture. Earlier this year, Netflix did another great day in Harlem. They brought some of the Netflix folks, Mike Coulter, Ava DuVernay, Spike Lee, Alfre Woodard, and they created Great Day in Harlem Netflix. 5 years from now, 10th anniversary of Silicon Harlem. Let's take the social innovators. Let's take the creators. Let's take the funders. Let's take the entrepreneurs. Let's take the thinkers. Let's take the doers. Have another great day in Harlem, celebrate the 10th anniversary, the 65th anniversary of Great Day in Harlem, go to 126th Street and talk about all we've accomplished to make everything possible for this great community this technology can enable. We've got more brain power, more funding power, more thought power in this room than is convened almost anywhere on this planet. If we continue to put that work, if we continue to put that effort into creating more great days in Harlem. I am really proud to be the first recipient of the Charles B. Rangel Award. It's humbling. They say you can't go home again. It's good to know they're wrong. Thank you very much.